Cam who?
Or Cameron who?
Or Cameron who? You entered my life during a time of, I would say, immense inner struggle. I was feeling very lost in my career. I was dealing with a lot of pressure personally. I was engaging in very unproductive, destructive behaviors and, patterns of thinking. And, you met me with safety and compassion. And we ended up working together for 5 years, in a professional psychotherapeutic context.
Yes.
And that length of time that I saw you for our weekly or fortnightly sessions is just a testament to, your, the space that you've held for me and just your non-judgmental, kind, supportive demeanor. So yeah, Cameron, you mean a lot to me. This is a really special episode. I mean, all of the episodes are special, but it's very rare that I get to sit down with a psychologist. And so I want to start by saying thank you. Thank you so much for being such an important part of my life and, for sharing yourself and your wisdom with us today.
Thank you, David. And thank you for having me here. Yeah.
And I just want to throw out a disclaimer. This is not a therapy session.
No.
So, sorry for those who grab their popcorn.
Yeah.
This is going to be more of an exploration of one of the most common themes and challenges that I've struggled with and that you might be struggling at home, whoever's listening. I've given my consent to explore some of the themes and challenges that Cam helped me through over the course of those 4 or 5 years. And really they boiled down to this idea of imposter syndrome. And that was one of the core challenges that I sought professional help with from you, Cam, back in like 2020 or 2021. So perhaps, let's start there. Like,
sure.
What is imposter syndrome, Cam?
Oh, look, there's a lot of definitions that they have for that. But if you're going to have a very general kind of definition for, the lay person, that it's when a person feels like that they're not able or not confident or competent in their area of expertise, if you say, or their area of their skills, and they kind of really underplay it and have a lot of fear and anxiety about being able to perform their work, even though they do have the skills and that for it. An example that I can give is, someone who's well-trained, qualified, whether it is a tradesperson or someone who's been through university, and, they get on the job, they've got the skills, they've got the knowledge, they've probably even got a lot of practice and stuff going through in that particular job they're doing, and then they have these doubts about their capacity. And I think with imposter syndrome, there's that disparity between understanding what you can actually do and then having this fear that's probably quite irrational in some ways, or rational as well, that then they kind of go, oh, I can't do this. And then you always forever got this kind of, oh, what if, or I'm not sure if I can do this. And sometimes I think that really then stops us from progressing in doing some of our work. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely relate to that, obviously, and it does feel like a handbrake of sorts that we place on ourselves. And within a professional context, I remember when we started working together, I, had big dreams and ambitions of building a business of my own, and I felt really out of my depth. I had no experience in, in business. I also, wanted to build it in the mental health space, and so I didn't have any like formal qualifications or anything like that at the time. So I felt quite young compared to my peers as well, who were also going out and doing something like that. And I really got in my own head about, feeling like, I can't do this. Others seemingly have all of the skills and expertise that I don't.
Yeah.
So, but then it's almost like a vicious cycle, right? Because you need the skills and the expertise, supposedly, to get started.
Yeah.
Also, our mind would have us believe.
Absolutely.
But we don't have that.
Yeah.
So how do we reconcile that?
I think there's a real subtlety in that as well, David, in terms of we sometimes underplay how much skills we actually have, and we have a perception that we're less skilled than what we actually are. And so then that kind of bleeds into our thoughts and our negative thinking about it. And then we sometimes don't give something a go, thinking that we don't have the skills to do it. But in fact, if we gave it a go, we might actually find evidence that we can, right? The other comment I wanted to make, David, was this imposter syndrome doesn't just kind of sit and disappear. It's not, in my 25 years that I've worked, even myself, I sometimes feel like when I get to the next challenge and move to a new job or go up the ranks a little bit, have more responsibility, I get that little tinge going in there of, oh, maybe I don't know if I can do this. And so I think sometimes that anxiety, we can either say, oh yeah, I'm not going to do it, and then don't do it. And then we never address that kind of anxiety and maybe possible imposter syndrome. But if we give it a go and then find out, oh, you know what? I'm actually able to manage this. Or, I've got a job now that I'm managing rather than just being a regular team member, I'm managing a team. I never thought that you could do that. And then you get into, oh, I'm in doing it. I can see some of my skills. And then imposter syndrome comes in. Oh, should I really be here? Do I have the skills, or do I deserve to be here at this level? And so I think everyone has that to a certain degree. And I think later on, I want to talk about how you kind of offset some of that, to kind of lessen the sound that the imposter syndrome has in your head, and then be really present in yourself to be able to understand, well, actually, I can do it if I give it a go, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and look, I mean, what you're describing, I feel is something that is so universal.
Yeah.
So why is it that we all have this imposter syndrome?
I think it's just naturally part of the human psyche as human beings. I think when we have insight into our own being, our own existence, what we're doing, how we do it, whether we're happy with it, we have measures of, well, I want to do this much and do this well, or this is good enough for me. And with all those things mixed up there, when imposter syndrome comes in, I think it kind of really is for when we have an insight that we want to be better or do better than what we are doing right now, but we're not sure. We might have an anxiety or fear of giving it a go to see whether that's true. Because can you imagine you give it a go and then you fail miserably, and then you get into that spiral and go, oh, well, I shouldn't have tried it. And then you go, maybe I wasn't made for this. Maybe I'm trying for all these things and I'm pretending to be this person, but I really can't do it. But that's kind of then really eating into this imposter syndrome. It's really this doubt that you have about yourself and your capacity. And I think even the person, the CEO of the biggest company, still has some doubts about that, because they've had to work themselves up to that point and to get to that role. And whether they felt they got it by design or they had it by, there was an opportunity, or just by accident and stuff. Sometimes we had those doubts. People who are up high, who do really well and probably manage the imposter syndrome, are probably the ones who have gone, I've done all this by design. I've got there because of my hard work. Things didn't happen by accident. I got it because under my own speed, my own power, my own will, and good things came to me. And then I think that kind of, I'm getting into where you can have some of those thoughts that are a bit different, that kind of then dull down the fear from the imposter syndrome you might have.
Yeah, I really want to dive into that, management and, how we can advance in spite of imposter syndrome. But what I'm curious about before we get there is, what are the consequences or the maladaptations that come from the mismanagement of imposter syndrome? So like if I'm really feeling crippled by this doubt that you're speaking of, and I'm getting those anxious thoughts like, do I really deserve to be here? Maybe I don't have what it takes. What's the point in even trying? Because I know I'm going to fail because I don't have, the skills or the experience, or I'm too young, or I'm too old, or whatever the story is. What happens if that's not addressed?
Well, if it's not addressed, then you kind of stagnate. You just kind of sit still and you do nothing. You might exist in your current role, your job. You just put out the same amount of effort and intention to whatever you're doing, but you never grow beyond that. You never push yourself beyond that boundary of that discomfort. You kind of then sit in, well, this is where I am and this is all I'm going to do, kind of thing. And maybe some of those consequences can be disenchantment in life. I hate my job. This is not good anymore. I have no motivation to do anything in my life. It would definitely impact on your relationships with other people. First thing, in your relationship with yourself, really. You kind of look at it and go, I'm feeling worse and worse. And then, mental health conditions could occur. Get more anxious, maybe you weren't anxious before, but you might develop anxiety, and then maybe some mood disturbance as well. Different thing for different people. I'm not prescribing saying that that's going to happen to everyone, but I feel like the people that I've seen, they kind of just stop and get, I guess we've talked about this, get paralyzed with life for that moment. And so then, then you have to work through some of that stuff. And I'm guessing that's your next question around sort of things that you would do to address it. Yeah.
Well, completely. And yeah, I distinctly remember feeling paralyzed. And when we started working together, I mean, there were some pretty serious challenges I was going through with, various traumas in my family. And also, I guess my perception, maybe something that we can unpack here as well, around these coping behaviors that result as a consequence of perhaps not being able to deal with imposter syndrome in a healthy manner. I know for me, because I never felt like I was good enough, whether it was in a social context and then perhaps engaging in substances or using substances to try and fit in, to feel like I was good enough.
Yeah.
Or, within a professional context, because I didn't feel like I had what it takes, I overcompensated by working really, really hard and, sacrificing my well-being and my sleep and, deep, meaningful relationships. So, yeah, can you perhaps, explore what drives us to engage in those kind of coping behaviors?
Sure. Yeah. I think for some people, it might be well-entrenched coping mechanisms that you've had from when you were younger. So, in therapy and in the work that we've done, I explored with you around things like how you cope now when things get difficult. Can you think back of when it was when you first started to do that? And often the case, and I think you said, there were things happening in your younger years that when things got hard, you just kind of went into that mode to protect yourself, or so whether it was avoidance or it's running off and stuff. So the psychological stuff of flight or fight responses and stuff. And then it gets, as you get older, you become more internalized in some of these things if you have awareness of what's going on for you, that the external really impacts on you. And then you have this thought, okay, how do I protect myself? And then you have all these mechanisms that are cognitive and behavioral. Behavioral, you don't go out and do stuff. You don't take opportunities to go and just say socially you want to meet people, but you're too scared to do that. So then you make excuses. I'm too busy. I'm going to focus my energy on doing more work and stuff rather than go down and catch up with friends and then meet new people, or go and join a group where there's a whole lot of new people you may not know because you just don't feel comfortable to do that. So there's, I guess there's mechanisms that you've kind of developed over time through your childhood and adolescence, or new ones that you develop as more demands come through when you become an adult. When we start work, whether it's, a part-time job, or especially when we're an adult, whether we've graduated or we're going to trade, whatever, right? That's a whole new development in our life. And depending on how ready you are for that psychologically, might determine what you kind of do to manage some things. So we all know some of the people who find it really stressful and then we never see them. They go and they hide away and they kind of decompress, and they come back and can only have a little bit of time with you. Others do the other way. They get all their energy and stuff from hanging out with a whole lot of people just to take their mind away from the actual stress they're having. So I guess I'm getting into that area where they get their energy from, right? So for me, if there's a lot of things going on, I need to really slow it down, spend some time by myself, clear everything up, then get back to it. And sometimes those people don't get back to it. They just stay in that space. And then conversely, the other side, the one that I said that they go out and party all the time, they don't stop partying. They get into, it's where the addiction stuff probably comes into, drugs, partying out, drinking, promiscuity, all of that kind of thing. And then to kind of cover up the kind of problems that are going on. Yeah. And a lot of that stuff is the internal thing. We're talking today about not knowing whether we're good enough in terms of what we do, so the imposter stuff, but that's only one aspect of a human. We could have, a lot of doubts and stuff around how good are we as a person? How good are we in being able to attract people? How good are we or able to hold a job down? how good are we to get promoted in that if we don't feel that way, or we are not able to look at the skills and qualities that we have at this time in a logical and very transparent way, I guess, or maybe a real way. And we kind of go, oh, no, I could never do that. I can't go up to that person that I am attracted to. No, I can't possibly get that job. And where's that coming from? It's coming from our thoughts and our experiences in life. So we've got thoughts about, well, maybe I'm not good enough to go to talk to that person, so I never will. I'm not good enough to get that promotion, so I never go for it. We talk ourselves out of it. It's very maladaptive in that way. Yeah. I don't talk about right or wrong, good or bad here. It's about adaptive thinking, adaptive behavior, and maladaptive stuff as well. Because it's talking about, I guess I'm talking about, I don't think there's a fundamental difficulty or a disorder or a problem, a deficit in us. It's just that the way that we've probably been thinking and how we respond to our feelings and stuff, and then how we behave, has been entrenched into us in a certain way, either through growing up, or we've seen the world in a certain way, found it, maybe perceive it as dangerous, so then we shut down. We either undercompensate or overcompensate, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm the same as you in the sense that, when life feels overwhelming, or I feel like I'm dealing with a lot more pressure, I do tend to retreat. And, those closest to me can probably identify that. Perhaps I don't respond to messages as swiftly as I typically do. And it's a really important point around, being able to, honor that time and space, and then be able to, resource yourself to come back and meet with life and the world.
Yeah.
What I'm particularly curious about is just that, the imposter syndrome, sort of seemingly impossible standard that we hold ourselves to. How can, if this is a byproduct of perhaps conditioning throughout childhood, or maybe we receive certain messages from teachers, or colleagues, or media, news, which reinforce this belief that wherever you are right now in life, it's not good enough. You need to be doing more. You need to have more skills or experience, or whatever the story is.
Yeah.
How can someone listening who probably really feels this on a really deep level start to rewrite that and start to break free from the chains or the shackles of this imposter syndrome?
I think expectations and stuff start from the very beginning, from the very point when we as children understand that there is an expectation from our parents to be a certain way, whether it's discussed or it's implied. So use the example that all kids should be, well behaved. They should be, just seen, but they shouldn't be saying stuff, too much. It's parents who are guiding them. And I think it really starts from, building it from the childhood, when the child's developing to learn how to make decisions for themselves, by parents helping them to come up with options, and then they decide on what is a good one, and then working out what the consequences would be. If you did it this way, then this would happen. If you did it this way, it might be better. All of those kind of things. But let's just think about even just the life stages we have, coming into puberty and stuff, and then having to learn how to understand those changes there, plus the demands that we have socially and in the world in terms of schooling and with family. The biggest one that I kind of see in terms of expectations is VCE, right? It might sound a bit controversial here, saying that. And, I'm not saying in any way that, you shouldn't be exploring and supporting your kids to do really well in VCE, because, it's about education. Education is the best thing to keep people, to enliven and make their life good, right? But I guess different people have different experiences of pathways through education and that. And if there is an expectation that, you're going through school, that then your final 2 years, or especially your year 12, is so pivotal and important that you need to get a TER of whatever, over 98% or so. What does that set up for a young person to say that we need to endeavor to have perfection, right? Now, there's a difference here, the way that I see it anyway, and people can agree to disagree on this. But, that's one stage in our life. VCE is a way in which to demonstrate that we have the capacity to be able to do work to a certain standard and meet standards that then allows us to move further into tertiary education, into broadening our experience. But what kind of gets lost in there is that it's about people doing the best that they can, because everyone's different. not everyone, on the curve, not everyone's going to get 99.95, but there's an expectation that we all reach for that. Is a person who gets 85, are they any worse off than, or different, or challenged than someone who gets higher? It's just that, the person who got the higher mark was able to maybe have the capacity to be able to study better. Maybe they're, being able to remember things and work under pressure is much better. But, there's other people, it doesn't take into account the personality or temperament of other people. And so I've kind of to bring that in, because that also then informs us of how much we think our capacity is. If you've got a temperament that's very gentle and very sensitive, sometimes you find it really hard to take the hard knocks, which they seem like hard knocks, but they're not. They're just normal life. And then the ones who are a little bit more resilient in that way kind of go, yeah, that's cool, and we just bump over it, right? So we have to take into account that different people have different ways of responding to the external stuff that happens to us. And, so that's why you might have two kids who are doing VCE, doing exactly the same subjects. One does better than the other. It's not because one's smarter than the other. They're just different. And so I want to bring that in, because imposter syndrome is about people comparing themselves to a standard that is putting themselves against this kind of generic standard. We have to be at this level. And if we don't meet it, then we're not good. We're not capable. We're hopeless. We're disappointment. All those things can string through there. There's some families who, oh yeah, you didn't get 99.95. What was wrong with you? Oh, you didn't get the promotion in that job. What's wrong with you? Or you can do better. And they're those kind of external messages that I find very challenging. When I've worked in that, I work in the child and adolescent space. I'm constantly talking to parents about adjusting their expectations for their children and understanding what their children can do at this point in time and their capacity, and encourage them to do the best they can at this point in time, and kick goals in terms of meeting challenges and stuff, not saying that, oh, you have to be right up there right now. And so I think that also feeds in, then bring it around full circle to young adults, like yourself. And even for myself, being at the further end of my career, some of those messages still kind of resonate, or kind of are like artifacts in the back of your mind when you come up for a new challenge. You kind of go, or a new stage in your life, you go, oh, am I okay with this? Can I do this? And then I think back about it and go, actually, this is some of the messages that I've kind of kept with me. Either it's been given to me, or I've developed that because if I'm not good enough on competing against other people, I need to be better. And then I convince myself that in my perception of life, I have to be up here, and don't actually look at where my capacity is. How can you ask someone to do more if they don't have the capacity to do that? Or they haven't, maybe another way, haven't trained up for it, like an athlete. You can't ask, say, an athlete to run a a sprinter, a 100 sub 10 seconds if they haven't trained for it. And you get someone who does that and then they go, oh my goodness, it took me 18 seconds. And they don't even look at whether they've trained or not. I've just run it off the bat. I'm disappointed. I can't do this. I'm hopeless. Things like that.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you brought in VCE, because it does feel like a very pivotal stage in life where that ranking mentality gets reinforced. And, this is not like a slight on the education system. I understand why it exists, and the purpose of it to help create different pathways into tertiary education. I respect that. At the same time, it, like you pointed out, it does reduce someone's competency or proficiency to a number.
Yeah.
And it can feel so defining of their identity. And it certainly felt that way for me, even though I feel like I performed well. I did get a lot of those stories that you were talking about before around, you could have been better and all of that. So, it's an interesting point just around how can we learn to manage those expectations, and how can we short circuit that pattern of constantly even in spite of the evidence which suggests, okay, maybe I need to train a bit more to build my capacity or, to build my, skill level
Mm,
to compete or to perform at the same level as this sprinter who's
yeah,
doing under 10.
yeah.
Um, what are some steps that someone can take, whoever's listening, to kind of remind themselves
Mm,
of that fact and learn to kind of build
yeah,
that kind of awareness and I guess self-compassion really
yeah.
is what we're
Yeah,
talking about
exactly.
here.
I think let's start with the young people, because I think that if you've got some listeners out there, maybe parents or young people who are going through that challenge of end of high school and into tertiary education,
Mm.
even in tertiary education, you will have to do really well then to finish and get your degree, and you want to get it with honors, all of those kind of things, right? I think it's about the missing part is not just the driving force of results and endpoints that are very discrete stuff, meaning like how much points you got for, your TER and stuff, but it's also the process. So for parents and stuff, it's helping to the young person or to understand that, they've got feelings that are going along with it. And obviously the young person knows that, but to acknowledge and to validate those things and see with their child. So for instance, like, parents say, look, I can see you're really stressed and stuff. And, I know it's a really big year and that. Is there anything that we can do to help you here? Or, yeah, you don't need to hit it as hard there because you've got plenty of time. Do you need some help with, we can spread this out a little bit? Because I kind of sometimes feel like, and I've heard when I've worked with young people, the driving force is just to get outcomes on there, and they get really stressed. They sit in front of their desk and go, don't know what I need to do. And I've got 4 weeks before our SAC is due and stuff. And then, then I'm worried they're catastrophizing about the future. Then we got the exams in the middle of the year and that. So helping them to kind of understand that it's not just about outcomes, it's about the process that you're going through and how you smooth that process out by calming yourself, finding balance in that so that when you get to the end, to when that SAC is due or when you finish that exam, that you are in the best space at that point to be able to perform, because we know, that performance anxiety is really high, our performance goes down low, all of those things, right? This also then works for adults and stuff. I say parents with children, with the young people, because I don't expect young people to do this themselves. They need to kind of have someone co-regulate and help them with that. Although I'll caveat, there are some teenagers I work with that can do this really well and can do it by themselves because their parents haven't been able to find a way to support them. But let's get into the young adults and stuff. So this is about them finding their own self-talk around this stuff. So the way that I have worked with people was to say, well, let's really drill down to what the issue is for you. So what's the goal? Is to reduce the stress because I'm feeling overwhelmed and I don't think I can do this job. And then I'll say, okay, so then as a psychologist, I'll go into this. I'm a CBT person, cognitive behavioral therapist. So I'll be looking at the way that you think, how you feel about things, and then what behaviors occur. And then also then after looking at that, I'll be looking at what are the things that you can and cannot do out of that. Right. So thinking is probably the biggest thing because everyone thinks. There's no thoughts ever. There's never any time that there's no thoughts really. And generally, you probably could agree with that. When we're really stressed, the negative stuff comes out really quickly, and we forget about our positive things. So that's probably one of the first things. And when I talk to a young person, I think I've even asked you, what are all the good things that are happening to you right now in amongst this stress that you have right now? And so then you look at it and really flips the switch a little bit to, oh, actually, you know what? There's a lot of good things happening to me right now, but this big thing it's become really big in my head and has derailed me. And so can I compartmentalize that, or can I look at the good things that are happening and utilize some of that? So, if you're really stressed about trying to start up a business or so, and you've got so much stuff going on and you forget about the balance in your life with other things, good sleep, exercising, socializing with people, all of those things, because then that takes you away from your brain. Then there's the other things with your brain. When you're by yourself, you're probably going to have all these things going in and you go, oh, I'm so doubtful of myself. Then I say, let's go to basics. Just stop everything and then think about what it is that you want. And have you got mechanisms, skills that you have been kind of ignoring, or because things are so stressful that you have forgotten about them? Bring them back to the forefront, because it may be skills that may be not directly related to the task, but it can help you feel a bit better that you're not just unworthy. Because sometimes we get into that real dark space and go, oh, yeah, this is hard. I can't do anything. I'm no good at anything. I'm hopeless. Why does anyone want to be around me? And that's the dark space. And then part of it is actually to circumvent that first. I work with a lot of people who are in that dark space and I have to help them out. And when they do get to that out of the dark space, then I say, let's see if we can put a close on that. When things get really hard for you, your default has to, you go on a spiral down in the dark hole. Let's see if we can kind of stop that a little bit. We acknowledge that it happens, but is it from a very functional perspective, adaptive perspective, is it helpful? No, it isn't, because I get stuck at home for 2 days and I can't do anything. Instead, I see it happening. Then I go, okay, what do I need to kind of change this? I need to get out of this headspace because I'm thinking about this too much, and I'll go do something nice. I think I've said that to you in the past. You know, you were overwhelmed and I just said to you, David, just go off and do something, you know. Go ride your bike because I know you like to cycle, and or go and catch up with a mate and stuff, and then get back to it afterwards. And then generally, I think you found it better. Yeah.
Absolutely. And, I think it's always funny how oftentimes it's just the simplest activity or solution that seems to make the biggest difference. Because yeah, you're right. And even the guidance that you shared with me just around what's the evidence that you can point to of, your achievements and what you're proud of.
Mm.
Because, when we're in that dark space, I'm sitting alone with my thoughts and I'm getting trapped in this downward spiral of I don't belong here,
Yeah.
or, I'm not as good as X, Y, or Z.
Yeah.
The demons come out of the
Yeah.
woodwork and you just become completely blind to
Yeah.
all of the beautiful things in your life.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, coupled with taking time out away from the problem, and kind of a running
Mm.
quote that I've come back to throughout the podcast has been, Einstein said, you can't solve a problem from the same level of consciousness that created it.
Yeah.
So actually,
Mhm.
taking yourself away and,
Yeah.
creating a new environment to support new patterns of thinking
Mm.
and a new mental and emotional state
Yeah.
starts to open up a bit more,
Yeah.
bandwidth maybe to
Yeah.
to focus on
Yeah.
those good things.
Yeah.
What's the impact of doing that, over a long-term perspective? Like, what's actually happening psychologically and emotionally as we get into this habit and practice of, stopping, maybe doing a fun activity,
Mm.
and then, redirecting our attention
Yeah.
to all of the, positive, uplifting
Yeah.
things in our life?
Yeah. It changes the way that we see problems, and then we behave in a different way, and we attribute the causes and stuff to something different, or we can see it in a bigger picture, and then it will change our thinking patterns from being what we call an automatic negative thought or thinking, or we might then change from a negative feeling response. So, negative thought generally brings anxiety, probably brings anger, sadness, hopelessness, all of those kind of things. And then our behavior is either avoid or to escape or to really attack it in some way, right? But not in a very productive or adaptive way. So by actually, I guess it's kind of retraining our brain to think about the problem in a different way. And some of the strategies that I've worked with people from a psychological perspective is to look at what is it in this situation that I have control over. So you break it all down. There's you, there's the situation, there's the environment. Okay. Situation is where you have, you're in with the environment. So they're the components that come in there and creates that situation. How much of that situation can you control? Your part you can. How much can you make a impact on? Maybe a little bit with the environment, but that depends on your behavior, and also depends on how you've thought this through and whether you feel comfortable enough to assert a change in there. But it all starts with you. So if you've got this negative situation occurring and you kind of go, oh man, this is all way too hard and everything, then we go to the point of, okay, I'm sitting in this. What can I do? What do I have control over? My own thoughts, my own actions, and my own feelings here. Feelings probably will be the one that's the hardest in a way, because it's a feeling. Our thoughts we can kind of change. We can go, okay, I'm thinking very negatively, and maybe I need to switch this up a little bit and think about what do I have control over in this situation. Therefore, I can behave in that way to then alter a change in my environment. And so that already then instills some adaptive functioning and then probably some hopefulness into okay, yeah, this is not as bad as I think it is, and I can take one step forward, meaning I could step away. There's a real subtlety here. There's either escaping without having done that process, or if you step away consciously because you want to take time away in order to think and take a breather, and then in order to step back in to do something about it, that's very different to just running off and not thinking about anything. And then when your feelings will probably then increase because, especially if it's something new, you kind of go, oh my goodness, no, I can't possibly. I'm training my brain to do something new, but it doesn't feel right in my body. Anxiety goes up. And, in classic psychology and psychiatry, we talk about arousal levels and stuff. And if you are something you're really fearful, you kind of expose yourself to that, as long as it's not dangerous.
Yeah.
I always caveat that it's not about doing something dangerous like jumping off a bridge and stuff like that. It's more around something that you didn't think you can do, but it's safe. You do it, hold that anxiety, get that behavior done, and then the anxiety decreases a little bit. And so next time you do it, because you've had success in doing it, the anxiety hopefully is not as high.
Just on that,
Yeah.
though, like even when we're in that peak arousal state,
Yep.
and this is someone who perhaps wants to put their hand up for a promotion at work, to
Yep.
go in for an interview, to step into a leadership position, to build that
Yeah.
business, to post content online, and they're feeling that anxiety rise up within them.
Yeah.
And you're saying, well, let's execute that behavior, and then the anxiety will dissipate.
Yeah.
But how can someone actually take that action with an emotional state of
Yeah.
anxiety within them?
Yeah, well, I guess there's two parts to that. If they are kind of, biologically anxious and doing anything increases it, we have to kind of treat that underlying anxiety first. But just say if you're generally not an anxious person, but doing new things, you have a normal, natural anxiety response because it's requiring a demand or change in you. I would say then for that person, or for both of them, one medicated, not medicated, is to look at it and go, what is it? It's about goal setting here. What is it that I want to do? And then is that too far a reach in this point in time? And do I have to make my goal smaller? So you're taking a very rational, practical, pragmatic approach to it. So just say if you're someone like your example, haven't done, content, for podcasts and stuff, and you really want to get into that, then what do you do in the background? You learn about how to do podcasts and stuff. You do run-throughs with that before you even get to the final product. You train yourself up on being able to speak on a microphone with other people, do test runs, do mock stuff, get really interested in a particular topic you want to talk about and really know about that stuff. So then when you do that podcast, you feel comfortable on air to do that stuff. So it's similar to what we're doing right now, I'm very comfortable with talking with you, David, about the, all the stuff that we've talked about today. And so maybe if you asked me, 20 years ago, it would have been very, very different. Yeah. Didn't know you 20 years ago, but it's about then breaking down from a very practical, pragmatic perspective, the things that you need to do and seeing whether you can do them or feel comfortable with it with a slight increase in difficulty in terms of the task is a little bit more. So I need to learn more. I have to accept I'm going to naturally feel a little anxious, but that's okay. That's part of the process. And therefore, all I need to do is be really skilled and practice in my behavior to get that skill out there and then get feedback. If you, in a podcast, you get it filmed and you have a look and go, yeah, I could do better in that way. I talked too fast here, or I didn't look at the camera, or I was looking away for too long. I can change all those things. And then that builds in, that feedback loop builds in the confidence and the capacity building and the competence that you can actually do it.
I mean, I'm really glad that you brought that up and full to kind of share my own experience, 'cause what you've just outlined is very much how I've approached this whole podcasting initiative, because I'm very new to it.
Yes.
I my knowledge of like audio visual is just reduced to my experience as a DJ. So I don't have any experience with podcasting whatsoever. I know that I had a message that I wanted to share with people that I was really passionate about, that I had a level of knowledge in. That I wanted to speak to. But, as far as, recording and planning, like you pointed out before, what has helped me take action in spite of perhaps the fear or the anxiety. I mean, I spoke about this in earlier episodes because I'm naturally quite a vulnerable person, if you haven't been able to
Yeah.
tell by now. And yet I still experience a lot of fears around, oh, well, what will people think of me, or if they might treat me differently as a result of me going very public with certain vulnerabilities. But I think, reminding myself of what I I believe in and what lights me up and what inspires me, because
Yep.
this, is very close to my heart,
Yeah.
coupled with, the actual planning,
Yep.
analyzing other podcasters who have done really
Yeah.
well. How do
Yep.
they approach the interview?
Yep.
What kind of questions are they
Yep.
asking? I worked with AI. I trained it in different, tools to help me with the logistics side of things,
Yep.
recording and editing and trimming clips and
Mm.
scheduling clips and
Mhm.
captions and show notes and all
Yep.
the stuff that,
Yeah.
you see online. There's so much that happens behind the
Yeah.
scenes. And I felt a lot of anxiety coming into this. I was still excited by it. But I think even something that I would add, which has really helped me, is labeling the anxiety as excitement.
Yes.
Because that's one thing that's actually always really helped me
Yeah.
when I'm stepping into something new and I experience that fear or that anxiety. Like,
Mm.
these are just words, right? But I
Yeah.
think, like, what the words that we use can have a really powerful impact on how they make us feel. And so when I label it as excitement or enthusiasm, as opposed to anxiety or fear, then this becomes more of like a game.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
I put out an episode, and, one of the earlier episodes, the mics weren't hooked up
Yeah.
properly. The audio wasn't great. I shared a note publicly apologizing and saying that I'll work to get better at it. And it builds that feedback loop.
Mm.
And, these are just these one percenters that have helped me only
Mm.
over the course of like 12 or so episodes at this stage to build towards that level of mastery, but choosing to see it more as like a game and something exciting, an
Yeah.
opportunity to improve and get better
Yeah.
and learn, as opposed to this big hairy
Mm.
obstacle
Yep.
with anxiety and fear in the mix. Like, it's just an entirely different lens through
Mm.
which I look at this project,
Yeah.
which has massively changed my mental and
Mm.
emotional state.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you've done an amazing job in regards to moving into that space. This is a, example of it, that we're sitting here and doing this. What I hear from you is, and I'll put it into, I guess, to bring it a little bit back into this, what we're talking about today. I kind of think about it in terms of our sphere or scope of competence, all right? And that can always expand or contract depending on how much we put work into it. So you came to doing podcasting with a very small sphere of competence and stuff, and you've grown that and made it bigger. That means it's knowledge that you've kind of put into that sphere of all this. These are the things I need to think more broadly about. We can do the same with life. We can do the same with jobs and stuff like that. And so in my work, especially that I've done a lot of stuff with supervising students, especially ones emerging to become psychologists, or they're in their early years, they're just beginning, they're really green, just been graduating. I really asked them to look, and this is for everyone, to look at what your sphere or your, circle of competence is, to go, this is how much I know, and this is what I can work within. And if I want to grow it, then I learn more, right? Learn more about it, whether it's more professional development around a particular area in the work that you do. So, just say, use various different examples. Just say if you're a GP and you've got your basic GP training, but you want to learn more about a specific area and being specialised. Tradie could be, you're a carpenter, but you might want to then learn some of the new tech that's going out there in terms of carpentry, so it makes your life easier. For me as a psychologist, it's about learning the new treatments or ideas and theories around how you treat mental health disorders, all those things. So for you as a podcaster, or as one of your roles as a podcaster, would be to learn, what are the new ways in which to do things, from setup to the technology you can use, even right down to lighting and sound and, voice projection, all of those kind of things. And you've got a certain sphere of competence right now around that. Like, I've got my own sphere in my own profession, but you want to learn more. and you learn more. And then that would also then help offset the feelings around, I'm not good enough, I've got this imposter syndrome around things, because what you're doing, you're actively creating your life to be better, more knowledgeable, and that you can give that to other people. And then when you give that to other people, that's the direct feedback that you get, that you're actually quite capable. But the thing is, you have to be open to seeing that as well. This, I want to add this in there, because sometimes we can have imposter syndrome, but there might be people that have been giving you so much good feedback. Oh, you're really great at that. You helped us so much. But if you don't believe it, then you still feel like you have that level of imposter syndrome despite the external environment. So this is where I'm getting to, the external stuff that's giving you, you're really good, David. You're really good, Cameron, in terms of what you do. And you go, yeah, but that's not enough evidence for it. I've been, I've done that a little bit in the past, and I think everyone has to work on that in terms of, yeah, there'll be good and bad feedback. Maybe look at the not good and bad. Let's just say there's feedback that we're given that is really helpful. And then there's other feedback that we don't like to hear, but it is still helpful because it tells us that there's an area that we might need to improve in. And so, someone says, oh, I heard that podcast, David, and didn't really like that bit about what you did and stuff. Oh, great. Okay. You could take it one way and say, I'm really, really bad at this, and that was really horrible. And, that takes you down a notch in terms of your confidence. Or you could look at the other way and go, actually, that's really good feedback. I'll have a look back on it. Oh, yeah, I can change that. Actually, I'm grateful for that person having told me that so I can make it better. Similarly, for me, someone might say, you didn't come to me in this way and say these things that were really helpful, and you didn't listen to me enough, right? I think we had a little incident with that early on. And, and then we work on that, and I'll go, oh, yeah, all right, I need to change that. Okay, for me, I probably went to try to get to the solution for that person or give options too quickly rather than hearing their story and collaborating with them to then find their own answer, that kind of thing. So, any feedback is good feedback. It's just depending on how we absorb that and see it as helpful or not. And generally, I think we should listen to those things. Shouldn't be a word there. We could, or it would be preferable to, so that it becomes or provides a learning point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And look, I do want to, acknowledge you for being so open to that feedback and hearing me and then adjusting, because it meant that, we could have such a wonderful, relationship together in that space. I think for whoever's listening who, might be in that position where maybe they are getting this kind of feedback and it does feel like it's a knock to their confidence and kind of reinforces that story that maybe I'm not good enough, or maybe it's not worth trying at this endeavor or project or business or promotion opportunity, whatever it is. What might you say to them to invite them to be open and to see that all feedback is good feedback?
Sure.
And to encourage them to expand their sphere of competence as well.
Yeah. Well, this is providing that the feedback they've been given has been appropriate. So, they've been given the situation, what the task was, how it was assessed and stuff, and then, what the response needs to be, right? Then if that's fine, then I would be asking them to look at that and go, how does that resonate with you in terms of your experience of that situation when it had occurred, and then the feedback that you're given about it? And, feedback can be anywhere from, 100% correct to absolutely zero, right? Because, the other person might have a particular perception or thought around you and they give that feedback, but it doesn't actually say much about you. It says a lot about the other person. So you need to have a look at that and take the relative stuff out of it. What is the relative contributions there that are helpful for me? So you can take the whole lot of feedback and then go, all right, that part was helpful. That part not so much. That is relevant to me. That is not me at all, right? Because a lot of times feedback that we get from people, sometimes it's not genuinely just all about us. There's also the other side, because, it's two people coming together. So it's not just one way. There's always going to be something that goes, it's transactional in a way, right? Directional, right? So I would be saying to the person to look at it in that very rational way of what it is that's happening, the situation. It's good feedback. What do I take from it? Then what can what have I contributed in there that's good and helpful, adaptive? What are the other parts that don't seem so adaptive and I have some control or I can make some change in that? And is it part of the bigger plan for me or for the situation if I need to amend and fix something to do it and then fix it up and then cut it off? It's done. Get feedback. Oh, yeah, great. Thank you so much, David, for doing that. And it's all fixed now. And you go, okay, cool. That then kind of limits you to the noise of it was all bad. All right. You've put yourself into a process of looking at what you contributed to it and take ownership of the things that weren't so great. You're doing something about it in a calm and thoughtful and directed way. See what the outcome is, and then we're done. All right. So that's a lot of things like, with management. This is done a lot in management of staff and management of people, but it's a really basic psychological thing. What we've got in front of us, we kind of deal with it. We take responsibility for the things that we can have control of or we are responsible for, and then leave the rest to the other person or leave it to the environment. There might be some things you can't change in the environment. You might be able to impact it on it a little bit, but then it doesn't really do much. And you just go, well, I've done my bit. Maybe it's bigger than me. I just do my bit to be honorable to myself, to my true self, and do the honest and right thing. And then we see what life takes us with. And if there's someone else involved in there, they do their own stuff too. Yeah. Because we can't control what the other person's going to do, think, or behave, right? We only ever have control over ourselves. Yeah. So again, it goes right back to the thing. When we're assessing ourselves and seeing how good we are, or we're getting into the mindset of, I'm an imposter, you do the same thing. No, what am I good at? I'm good at this. I know I can because there's evidence that I've done really well with these things. So I'm going to run on that. I'm going to run on those laurels because I've got that. What comes out of that? I've got skills out of that. Can that be put into this task that I'm feeling so overwhelmed by? So it's about, looking at your skills you have and your thoughts, and it really does go into then how you perceive yourself. Because when you look at the skills that you have, then you go, oh, okay, you perceive yourself a little differently rather than I can't do anything. Actually, I can do stuff. And then you do the behaviors that you do well, and they may not be totally relevant to the task at hand, but at least you're moving and doing something. And then you go, oh, actually, you know what? I can cope with this. It may not have made a change to the actual task, but I actually can cope in this sense of anxiety about doing something new. Oh, I've got that skill. So what then makes it hard for me to actually try this new skill or this new task, this new challenge? So then that can ward off, because like I said earlier, the imposter syndrome is because we got this perception that we can't really do something, but we're not really evaluating our capacity in full. That's, I guess, in a way, how I see it. Yeah.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
I think, what stands out is just that perception of self.
Yep.
And, the CBT or even the Stoic view, it's like, there's nothing out there.
No.
Only thing you can control is your inner state,
Yeah.
how you think, how you feel, how you act.
Yeah.
Right? Everything else is up to chance,
Yeah.
up to the environment.
Exactly.
Whatever you choose to believe in, but it's you can't exert your influence over the outcome ultimately.
No.
You can only
No.
focus on yourself.
No.
And so I think even when I've gotten stuck in comparison to others and been like, oh, well, maybe I'm not as smart or as clever
Yeah.
or as experienced as this person, I'm not truly comparing myself to them.
No.
I'm comparing myself to the perception that I have of them,
Yeah.
which is more of a reflection of how I perceive myself.
Yeah.
Which, as you were saying, is a really beautiful invitation to turn that around and ask yourself, well, what do I really think of myself? How do I perceive myself?
Yeah.
And, if I'm not perceiving myself in a really positive light, maybe there's an opportunity here to take stock and, like you said, really evaluate what are all of the things that I have achieved and the really, positive things in my life.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think there's a little bit there that I can add to it where it's a perception of the expectation of yourself, and you put yourself on this high ground that you think measures up to other people. So you're actually not measuring, and I guess I'm reiterating the same thing, but just in a different way, that these people are up here and you think they're there, so you need to be there as well. Therefore, you expect yourself to go to that level. But you don't actually then make a measure of how you get there or see the things that you have, because all it is about getting there as opposed to where you are right now. and what you have, and utilizing that to then move yourself in that direction. And I also wanted to comment that I think you can have an impact on the environment, but it has to start with how you see yourself and what your capacity is. So then you behave in a way that is actually quite adaptive to the environment. Because if you kind of just go, oh, yeah, I can do something, and then you just do something half-heartedly or half thought out, and then the outcome doesn't work very well, then you attribute it to this is not going to work. But sometimes your input, not sometimes, actually all your input, the way that you put it out there will have some impact on it, on the outcome. Yeah, it may not exactly be the one that you want, but at least you created the most high chance probability that something good could happen out of that. If nothing, at least you got a learning experience out of it. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm a big believer that we can create the reality that we desire. We don't have to live at the mercy of consequences. It's just like that, victim versus, creator, consciousness or state of being. So to that end, absolutely, how you think about yourself, how you feel about yourself, how you show up and how you put your work out there, you are influencing outcomes. I think, yeah, like you were saying even earlier, that the danger is when we place all our focus on outcomes and then lose sight of the process and, our inner state and how we're showing up. That's when I think, and it's just this like egoic, like things have to go this way. And if they don't, then I'm not going to be very happy. You don't want to see me when I'm not.
You know how I like to use, imagery and stuff like that. I kind of imagine it like you've got a cup of water here, right? And we've got a dye, all right? Just say your color's purple, all right? And how much or how little dye you put in there will make how light or how dark it goes in there. And so I'm going to make the analogy of the amount of dye that you put in is going to determine the outcome of how much impact it's going to have on the cup and the color, the shade of it. So just say we put in too much dye means it makes it negative or it's maladaptive. Then you've got this glass that's full of, purple dark dye that you really can't do a lot about. And the environment gets it becomes toxic, if you want to say, or it becomes maladaptive. But if you have worked on yourself or know what you want to put in there, you put in, you've got a whole vial of purple dye. You know that 2 mils is going to be perfect for that glass. You put that 2 mils in. It might seem very little and you can't see it in there, but it has had an impact on that. It may not be seen, but it's certainly felt because you've contributed 2 mils of you that you have thought about to that.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you,
I just thought about that then.
No, that's brilliant. That's brilliant. Yeah, it really helps bring it to life. And as we bring, this conversation in for a landing, I want to hear from you, Cam. What does being liberated mean to you?
Being liberated. Thinking, feeling, and behaving freely from, I guess you could say, inner shackles in a way of yourself. We think about things every day from the moment that we wake up until we go to sleep, and even when we sleep, things happen there. And it's just to be, I guess, free. I think to be able to see the differences, the shades there between the light and the dark, and be in that grey area, and to have to feel like you have choices and to develop and create choices for yourself in how you think about things, how you feel, and how you behave, and how you experience the world, and how the world experiences you. That's kind of the freedom there. Not being free, the opposite is to be stuck to a way of thinking, to a way of behaving, stuck in a job that you don't like, stuck in a life that you hate, feeling like that you're suffocated and not being able to do anything. I think we've talked a lot today about the shifting in perception around things, but it's not just perception. You can think all you like in your head and try to, go, oh, I'm going to think differently. I'm going to think more positively, more adaptively, but you've got to be able to do stuff and then, be able to, run with the feelings that are going to come with that, because I really feel like that feelings are the bit that will either get us to do more or do less, because it's kind of the thing that can paralyze us on top of the thoughts that we have. Oh, I can't do that. And then you have this feeling of anxiety. That feeling of anxiety, or like you said, could be just excitement. It could be, why don't I be more excited to try and see if I can do this, as opposed to this feeling is, oh, I'm anxious. I better not do it. I'm going to sit still and hide. So yeah, freedom is from all of that. And I think we can consciously do that by working through some of those negative cognitions that we have that automatically come up, those behaviors that we have that are learnt behaviors, with psychologists and therapists and, the people out there talking about learned behavior. We just do it because we do it. It's a habit. And I've talked to people about our thinking can be a habit. We can think in certain ways and never really challenge it. So we have to challenge them too. So then our behaviors change. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, spot on. Yeah, thank you, Cam. And for anyone who's listening who wants support challenging, perhaps some of those unproductive patterns of thinking or behavior, and they want to, learn more about you and potentially even work with you,
Yeah.
where could they go to connect with you?
Oh, absolutely. So I also work in private practice and currently work for a practice called Rose Phoenix Health. We practice out at Bulleen, but yeah, we're kind of slowing that one down a little bit, and I'm going to be kind of going out on my own for a bit. I still have some clients that I need to see, and happy to take some new ones, but I'm kind of moving myself into another area of work. So, and I'm going to be going full time there. So yeah, it's a bit challenging there, but I have my own practice in terms of Cameron Hu psychology. So yeah, but you can still find me through Rose Phoenix Health at the moment. Yeah.
Okay. Wonderful. Well,
Yeah.
I'll include the details in the show
Okay.
notes.
Yeah.
Cam, it's just been such a blast having
Yeah.
this conversation with you. I feel like, both of us have been on such a journey since we
We
met
have.
in 2020.
Yeah.
So I just want to honor you again,
Yeah.
just for, always being so thoughtful and supportive and inquisitive and taking an active interest in helping me become a better version of myself.
Yeah, I'm glad. Good.
It's really meant a lot. And this conversation, I feel, has been a really special way to honor that. So yeah, thank you so much.
Well, thank you, David, for inviting me here. It's exciting to do things like this on this topic. Yeah, it's amazing. Thanks again.
Appreciate it. And yeah, if this conversation resonated with you, who is listening right now, please share it with someone who you feel might benefit, who might also be stuck or struggling with imposter syndrome. And, that's a really easy way to start a conversation that matters. So yeah, thank you so much. I love you so much, and I'll see you in the next episode.